All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about this sudden, really high-stakes summit that's been announced between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. You know, this meeting is happening against a pretty brutal backdrop, and it's got the whole world asking, is this a real shot at peace, or is it some kind of cleverly disguised propaganda trap?
So, the official line from the White House is that this is just a listening exercise. But let's be real. What does that actually mean when the subject is a war that's been dragging on for almost 4 years? It's a very careful choice of words, right? It's meant to lower expectations, to signal caution. But when global security is literally on the line, can a meeting between these two leaders ever really be just about listening?
Okay, so first up, let's set the scene. Because where and when this summit is happening, well, it's incredibly telling. This isn't taking place in some neutral city in Europe. Nope, it's on American soil, in a place with some deep, deep historical weight.
What's really wild here is just how fast this is all happening. I mean, look at this. August 8th, the summit gets announced, kind of out of nowhere. Just 5 days later, there's a virtual sit-down with Ukraine and its allies. And then only 2 days after that, boom, the leaders are meeting in Anchorage. And that choice of location, a former Cold War military hub, that's no accident. It's meant to be a powerful symbol of American strength.
So all of this is unfolding on what you can only describe as a really complex and dangerous geopolitical chessboard. This isn't a simple negotiation, not by a long shot. It's a high-stakes game, and it's being defined by military pressure, diplomatic desperation, and some really, really conflicting goals. And this, right here, is the absolute heart of the conflict. On one side, you have Kyiv's non-negotiable red line, no deals on ceding territory, not without their direct, explicit say-so. But on the other side, you've got President Trump's proposal, which suggests that territorial adjustments might be on the table to end the war. As things stand, those two positions, they're just completely incompatible.
In the pressure, it is coming from all sides, and it is immense. Ukrainian forces, they're taking heavy, heavy losses on the battlefield. At the same time, Russia and Belarus are planning these huge military exercises, a clear flexing of muscles. The U.S. has shot back with warnings of very severe consequences, while all the allies are scrambling to look like a united front. This meeting is absolutely happening under the shadow of the gun.
You can just feel the anxiety coming from America's allies. European leaders are making these deeply worrying comparisons to the whole appeasement era right before World War II. Their biggest fear is that some kind of quick deal gets made that basically validates Russian aggression. That's a historic mistake they are desperate not to see happen all over again.
So, with all of that as the backdrop, analysts are really looking at 4 main ways this whole summit could play out. This next part breaks down all the possibilities, from something that's purely for show to a genuine, balanced resolution.
So yeah, how could this actually play out? What are the scenarios that experts are really considering here? Okay, let's walk through these. Scenario 1 is the symbolic summit. Trump listens, doesn't commit to anything, and avoids making allies mad. But Putin still gets a huge propaganda win just for being on the world stage. Then there's a fragile ceasefire. This is where a deal gets talked about over territory like Donetsk, which, you'll remember, crosses Ukraine's biggest red line. The third one, the strategic trap, this is where Putin could play on Trump's desire for a deal, getting concessions while only pretending to cooperate. And finally, the best case, but maybe least likely, outcome, a balanced resolution. A real ceasefire, a Russian withdrawal, all done with Ukraine and the allies fully on board.
Right, and it's so important to remember this summit isn't happening in a vacuum. Whatever the outcome is, it's going to send shockwaves across the entire globe. We're talking about something that could influence everything from energy prices to the global balance of power for years.
And yeah, you better believe the whole world is watching this. You've got countries like India that are worried about energy prices and their defense ties with Russia. For NATO members, the big fear is that a bad deal could crack the foundation of Western security. And really, for all the global powers, what happens here could redefine the balance of power for an entire generation.
So when you boil it all down, what happens in Alaska is going to come down to these 3 things. The political will of the leaders at the table, the cold, hard realities of what's happening on the battlefield in Ukraine, and whether or not the U.S. and its allies can get on the same page and stay there, before, during, and after this summit.
And so, we're left with that one essential question, aren't we? Will the Alaska summit be looked back on as this courageous turning point that brought us a step closer to peace, or will it just go down in history as a cleverly laid propaganda trap? The answer is going to shape not just the future of Ukraine, but the entire landscape of global power for years to come. Thanks for watching.